A few years ago now, I was a single person living in a 3-bedroom detached house, a stone's throw from the beach, and I really did think I had the perfect home. But despite that, the prospect of a 30-year mortgage at over £1,000 a month, plus all the bills, plus all the maintenance, soon left me feeling trapped. And I remember walking round the empty rooms thinking, am I really sacrificing my peace of mind for all this empty space? Fast forward until today, and I'm now living in that little van just behind me, and I've never felt more content. So in this video, let me show you how giving up that ideal home led to the freedom that I never knew I needed. I made a video recently where I worked out how much I'd saved by living in this van compared with a house, and over a year it worked out at just over £18,000. What I found over the years, if your income's here and your outgoings are either the same or just below, that creates a lot of pressure that you've got to live with on a day-to-day basis. So what living in a van enabled me to do is my income's here, and then obviously my outgoings are just going down and down and down. You create a big gap between the two, which enables you to save and creates opportunities for you that you wouldn't otherwise had. Back last year, I did a bit of a life reset where I stripped things back and significantly reduced all my outgoings, create a bit of a safety net in terms of savings, and allow myself to proceed towards a new path without the obligation of having big financial burdens such as a mortgage or high rent. My philosophy with life has always been to prioritize experiences over possessions and material things. Whilst I do appreciate that you do have to have one eye on the future and making sure that you're comfortable as you get into old age, I also always want to feel that at any point in my life, the curtains were to close on your life, would I be happy with how I've lived my life up until now? And that's always top of mind for me. Closely related to the financial aspect of living in a van is the work situation and the requirement to do a 9 to 5. I was working in London about 6 years ago, and that was the last time I was in the rat race. I just remember getting absolutely battered by clients in meetings and shouted at. And I went for lunch one time over Waterloo train station, over the bridge, and I was halfway across and I started feeling dizzy and sick, and I had to sit down. And it was only years later that I realised that that was stress, and I quit the next day. It was either that day or the next day I quit, and I've never looked back really. And these days I'm self-employed. I work for myself as a freelancer essentially. And by having the van and the financial comfort that comes with living in a van, I'm able to ride out any ebbs and flows in terms of incoming work, whereas the pressure is on more so when you've got big rent, big mortgage bills to pay. And I would absolutely hate the prospect of not being able to be self-employed and have that autonomy over what I do for work. And in relation to the financial side of things and the work side of things, this feeds into emotional well-being and mental health. And these factors start to compound. And when you feel like you no longer need to keep up with the Joneses because you're living in the back of the van, so the ego stripped, you're not trying to impress anybody with a flash car or a bigger house to impress friends, family, potential future girlfriends, boyfriends, etc. It all compounds to give you the more stress-free and content feeling. I was chatting to a friend a couple of weeks ago, and his ex-girlfriend had been married for the last 7 years and had recently been divorced and got a settlement of around about £70,000. And while she was in the marriage, she lived in a 4-bedroom detached house. And after she left the marriage, she rented a place, and crazily, she rented a 4-bedroom detached house at £1,800 a month. She was talking to my friend and complaining about how her money, the pot of money, was going down fast. And he explained to her, as was I thinking, why on earth are you living in a 4-bedroom house? Surely a 1-bedroom flat would do the trick. And her mentality was she wanted the same standard of living. And I couldn't get that out of my head for a few days because I'm like, that is just absolutely bonkers. And with house prices currently, whether that be renting or a mortgage, prices have just been going up and up year after year for decades, to the point where you have a lot of people question it. And hence, I feel this is why van life is going to come more and more into the forefront over the coming years and into the next decade. So I think in 10 years' time, you're going to get a lot more people living in a van than you do today. And whilst predominantly the main reason would be financial, there are many other benefits to living in a van that come with that, such as freedom, the ability to travel and see different places. And people are no longer buying into the fact that you must own a home. But that being said, you can still use the money that you save to, whether you put that in a savings account, whether you invest in the stock market, invest in yourself. So take me, for example, I may well buy a property one day, but I'll buy the property once I've got that chunk of money saved up. And I'm probably going to buy it in a country that offers me value for money, which the UK, as it stands at the moment, doesn't. And I think it's unlikely to change anytime soon. With the rise of remote work over the last few years, that was particularly accelerated because of COVID, it means that you can live and work remotely from a van. I remember when I first heard about Starlink coming out, it was like, oh wow, jackpot. I can work anywhere. I don't even have to stay in the city or around the city where you've got decent Wi-Fi. So that really opened the whole work situation up for me. And what a lower cost of living does do is freight gives me opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had. So in a few days' time, I'm heading to Asia for 5 weeks and also pursuing the YouTube thing. As time goes on, having a lower cost is going to give me that ability to push on and spend more time and invest more resources into the YouTube channel. And what I must stress is living in a van isn't easy. It's not that difficult, but it isn't easy. There are plenty of inconveniences. The obvious one are the toilet situation, the shower situation, but there are ways around it, and there are small sacrifice to pay for banking decent money every single month. I'm not saying you have to make extreme changes or live in a tiny van like me, but start to think creatively about how you can increase the gap between income and outgoings, and then think about what opportunities that could create for you in the future. I'm about ruthlessly eliminating stress and anxiety from my life. And as the years go on, I get better and better at doing it. And the first step is creating that gap. I get a few questions about why such a small van. And that's a very valid point. And I'll be honest, that really isn't for everybody, because I'd owned in the past a motorhome and a mid-sized van. So I knew what I was letting myself in for. And I'd kind of mentally prepared for being able to live in such a small space. And some of the benefits are things such as fuel efficiency, the ability to park anywhere, and just living under the radar, which is very much what I do in the van. Let me know in the comments if you're a full-timer and how it's going, if you're thinking of moving into a van and what may be holding you back. And if you've got any other questions on van life, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you very much for watching. Keep an eye out on my upcoming videos to my trip in Asia, and then I'll be back in the UK in the springtime bringing you some more van life content.